Hello, and welcome to The Mind of a Therapist, a podcast where I interview psychotherapists and helping professionals on what they're passionate about in order to provide you with messages of encouragement and hope. I'm your host, Andrew Earl. The Mind of a Therapist is sponsored by Psychological Counseling Services, healing hearts and transforming lives. Look into our intensive at pcsintensive.com. In today's episode, I talk with Fadi Skeiker. Fadi works extensively in applied theater, using the art form to help refugees heal from their traumatic experiences. He has directed, devised, and led applied theater work all over the world in Egypt, Germany, Jordan, Portugal, and the US. As a published scholar, he focuses on theater as it relates to human rights and refugees. Skeiker's book, Syrian Refugees, Applied Theater, Workshop Facilitation and Stories, While They Were Waiting, was published in 2020. Before joining University of the Arts, Skeiker taught at the University of Jordan, the University of Minho in Portugal, and the University of Texas at Austin. He also served as a visiting researcher at Free University of Berlin in Germany. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Thanks for listening. All right, Fadi, welcome to the Mind of a Therapist podcast. The first question I generally like to ask guests is, how do you view change? What does it take for an individual to change? What does it take for systems to change? What's your take on change?
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for this opportunity. This is a very tough question.
It's a big question.
It's a big question. Yeah. My theory about change is it's a comprehensive system. You cannot I do lots of work on drama therapy with the immigrants and refugees, dare I say that my work is changing their lives? No, I feel like change is a bigger issue that is related to the political system, economic system, the society itself. Definitely every part of the society should be contributing to create a change, but there is no change happening because of one single factor. There are many people who would ask me, this immigrant or this refugee who did the workshop with you, they went to college after, maybe because they did the workshop with you. And I would tell myself, no, definitely not. It's just they took 3-day workshop with me. How dare I say that?
Yeah.
Oh yes, it's probably, I would be lucky to say if they would have a memory from the workshop that's inspiring them. I would be lucky to say that if they say, oh yeah, that touched on something that reminded me of something, but I wouldn't dare saying that, a single workshop or a session or even longer program is the real reason for change.
Yeah. Well, that certainly aligns with my thinking. Is I think, we have experiences that can be profound, right? Someone in one of your workshops may have a big moment that's a shift. And I know I was talking with my dad recently too. My dad's a therapist, and PCS, who sponsors this podcast, they have an intensive program, and it's really transformational for people. People do 60 hours of therapy in 1 week, and they'll have these huge shifts, but it's just in the grand scheme, it's a small piece of what's shifting for people, and it takes time and time again of shifting in these directions that we're wanting to head. So I resonate with what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes the timing is right. It just happened. And after you do some work, you see a change happening. But as you were saying, it's scaffolding process. It's something building on the top of the other, over years, over times, memory after memory, experience after experience. And sometimes you're just lucky enough to be in the right time, in the right moment when you feel change is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And be curious to hear a bit about your background. So you're not a therapist, but you reached out, and I was super interested to have you on the podcast with what you're doing to help people heal from trauma through theater. Would you let the listeners know a bit about how you got into theater, and then what led you, or what sort of work you're doing these days, and what led you in that direction?
Sure. Yeah. I'm originally Syrian. I when I was like I finished high school, I studied English, and while I was studying English at Damascus University, I heard about the Higher Institute of Theatrical Arts, which is a leading theater institution in the Middle East at the time before the Syrian war, and at the time, like the TV and Syrian industry, and still going on, it was booming, like, and whoever would study at that institute, they would be on their way to be either like an actor, director, a writer. It was incubating factory or incubator for anyone who wants to do TV industry. And I was like, I want to be a star. I want to be like, yeah, I want to like work in the media. So I applied for the institution, and like I got accepted, and I studied there for 4 years. And then and all of this time, I'm like honing my theatrical skills. I'm like trying to be like good director, studying theater studies and criticism and history, but at the same time having my eye on the TV industry. But then I got this fellowship to go to the US, to Emerson College, to get my master's. And I was like, sure, no problem. I'll go for 2 years and come back to Syria and do TV work, right? But then I started taking courses with Robbie McCauley on community-based drama, and my life changed. I was like, this is why we do art. We do art so that we are able to offer platform for the oppressed, for the historically marginalized communities, to voice their stories and like do our contribution in this community, right? And that was the first step that like distanced me a little bit from my dream to be a star and like actor in TV industry. And
Yeah, I
then
want to butt in and ask a bit more about that community-based drama. Will you share a bit more about like some of those experiences you had at that point and what community-based drama is? I'm not very familiar.
Sure. It's like when you are trying to do theater, definitely to have a performance that you would share with the community. But the main goal is actually to empower the community, where you are devising theater script and performance with the community on an issue that's related to them. So if we are having a problem in the community I'm living in, a theater artist, applied theater artists come to this community and brainstorm with them scenarios of what they could do as a community to move forward and to address the problem that they are facing as a community. And they try to rehearse the change that they want to see in their communities. In order to achieve that communal perspective, you need to be able, as an applied theater practitioner, to touch on the personal life of the person. So a very famous exercise is like, to get to know the people, to hear the people's stories. And simple exercise would be asking the person, what's the story of your name? Like any one of us have a story for their names. Who named them? What's the meaning of their names? What's the association related to their names? If they have an opportunity, would they change their names? This is like low risk exercise that would work with any community member, even if they are not interested in drama. They would start telling you about, their relationship with their names. And while they are talking, because it's very personal thing that they are talking about, they would start touching on issues in their deeper than just their name, about their personalities, their human beings, their community. So it's like balancing act in community-based drama, where you are focusing on the person as a person, but at the same time try to create a connection with other folks in the community to create a general community discourse, all through theater, right?
Yeah.
And all about like the idea of like, or the phrase rehearsing change is very important, right? So let's say, for example, famous Augusto Boal, actually, he's like one of the leaders of what we call theater of the oppressed. He's a Brazilian practitioner who wrote a lot about theater of the oppressed. And the famous example is like, I don't know, like, let's say we are living by a river, and the city wants to build a bridge on that river, but that's going to affect everyone's lives. So like, a applied theater practitioner would go to that community and like start to rehearse stories, and how is that going to affect your life? Okay, let's form a story about it, let's act it out, and then see the pros and cons of doing it. So that's related to a community practice, right? Which is different than drama therapy, which is like more of more personal work, and not aiming to have final performance at the end. So, for example, like if I'm doing work with the refugees, which I do a lot, I would do a workshop with 4 or 5 of them, right? And like, it will never be shared outside the drama therapy workshop itself, right? Because like, we don't want to because they're going to be touching on stuff that are very personal for them, right? And they are going to be processing it, dissecting it, if you want, acting it out, right? In safe environment, which is the drama therapy workshop environment. While in a community-based theater, we are like presenting it to the community to have a dialogue about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Longer answer.
Oh, yeah, it's super interesting. So the community practice is oriented towards having a performance and giving voices to members in the community, whereas the drama therapy is confidential. It's allowing people a space to process trauma. And so, going back to, you're in this master's program and you're introduced to the community based drama. Where do we go from there in your story?
Oh gosh, and then like I was like, oh, I never learned about this. I just took these couple of courses at Emerson, so I was like hungry, like I want to learn more about it. So my advisor at the time suggested for me to check University of Texas program in what they call performance as public practice, and it's a PhD program for applied theater, and how could theater be empowering tool for citizens to be active in their communities and to help facilitate, create the change in any capacity that you are able to contribute, right? So I applied for the program, got accepted, moved to Austin, Texas, got my PhD, and I wrote my dissertation on what I call performing liminal citizenship, where citizens who are neither here nor there, immigrants could be citizens, they are dancing between two territories. They're like past their homeland and their current host community, A liminal citizen could be refugees who are like running away from a country that they are connected to emotionally, but they are currently physically present in this community. It could be international students. It could be anyone who feel the split. They are neither here nor there, in between. And then I finished my PhD, and I felt the call, like the need to go back to the Middle East and contribute to so I landed in position at the University of Jordan in Amman, and I started teaching. Sorry, I have no idea what that.
Oh, no problem.
I kicked all the family out of the house.
Yeah.
So.
No problem at all.
Yeah. where were we in Jordan?
Yeah,
And,
you moved back to Jordan and got a position
yeah,
at the
which
university. Yeah.
right, and that was like it's like I decided to go to Jordan because it's neighboring country to Syria. I
Yeah.
love Jordan, right? And I started like then living parallel lives. I was like teaching very artistic art form. I was teaching directing, acting, and I still do script analysis, and like I'm professional theater director. I'm professor of theater, but at the same time I do voluntary work related to applied theater, drama therapy. Uh, and in Jordan at the time, I was like addressing men-women equality within the context of Jordan, youth at risk problems, through applied theater and drama therapy. And then the Syrian crisis started in 2011, and hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees started flooding to Jordan. And the same organizations that were facilitating my work in the community started asking me to do drama therapy with the Syrian refugees, and then my work moved toward that direction. Then I moved to Europe. I stayed there for a bit. I did lots of work in Germany and in Portugal with the Syrian refugees communities. And then I landed in this position at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, where again, I'm still teaching directing, script analysis. I direct professionally, but then I do work with the organizations that help refugees and do work with them related to applied theater and drama therapy.
Yes, starting off in your career, you had this vision of fame, right? And then you've been directing, you've been doing, you've been teaching, and then you've also put efforts into applied theater. What was it that pulled you in that direction, or why? Give, it seems like such a service. You could have just pursued the directing and the fame, but why? What drew you to the applied theater?
I think it's like there's there's a calling for every one of us, and I felt that was my calling. And I'm very flexible person. Like, I don't know, maybe I would wake up tomorrow and decide to start like writing scripts and doing. But then little by little, I started building a project for my life, if you want, which is putting the narratives and stories of the oppressed in the center of the public sphere, whether through community-based theater or through drama therapy, where at least I'm talking about it all the time in my research, and people would know that, like, okay, we could do drama therapy with the refugees, or even if I'm directing professionally, like if I'm directing a play at the university or in regional theater, I pick themes and scripts that are talking about identities that we don't talk about usually. And suddenly I started to feel like this is my project in life, if you want, right? And sometimes it's like art, like related to theater, but sometimes it's not. Like I'm doing a project now as we are speaking with the Art Museum in Philadelphia, where I get 4 immigrants. We'll take them to the museum and we ask them to identify 2 pieces of arts. One piece of art represent their former lives, one piece of art that represent their life in the US moving forward, and then we are producing 4 shorts, each one of the immigrants who we are shooting. And it's gonna live on the blog of the art museum. It's gonna be on their social media. So it's like, it's not theater, but it's also like it fits within my project, so I will do it. I started doing a radio drama related to monologues of refugees. I called it the Refugee Monologue Projects, where we had 10 monologues presented, on a podcast format, where it's just like 10, each monologue is like 3 or 4 minutes about stories of refugees, So it's like, it's not theatrical per se, it just intersects with theater. And that's also like, because I broaden my perspective about theater, like where I follow like performance studies perspective, where anything could be interpreted as theater, right? We broaden our definition of theater. It's not only that like Italian theater, a space where like you go and like you sit and watch an actor and like you clap for them. And I do that really well. I could do it. It's just like, and I still doing it, but like even when I do it, I feel, okay, where is in this play a character who is not presented usually in the public sphere? How can I use the privilege I have of like being in this space to present these voices, right? And little by little, like I think when you start like to believe that you are you are part of a project, you are like, the details become less important, like you are a star, or you are, or you want to act or you not want to act, everything becomes part of this project, and this is what I'm interested in.
I'm hearing flexibility was a big piece for you to well, I'm hearing you really honed in on the craft of theater. You're good at traditional theater, but then you kind of expanded what theater could look like, and highlighting voices from the oppressed and marginalized communities, and then also with the drama therapy. Curious to hear more about drama therapy. I know in my education in the U.S., I learned a bit about psychodrama and that process. But would you say more about the practice of drama therapy, what sessions look like, and maybe a few stories if you are able to?
Yeah. So I tend to think of my work in drama therapy as therapeutic more than therapy itself, because I'm not licensed drama therapist, right? But my work intersects hugely with drama therapy, precisely because it focuses on hearing a story, telling a story, enacting the story, processing it. For example, a project I led in Jordan was with a group of Syrian refugees who were there, and we were like asking them to identify 2 moments of despair and hope during their journey when they were like through their like refugee trip, and then like we would start like by listening to the stories, and then like we would check to see if it's okay for them to perform it in a very simple theatrical scene, or like at least sharing it in a way that's not only talking but like activating your body to share it, right? And then we'll see who in the room have intersected who in the room has shared experiences related to the story, and creating that like bonding moment sometimes with people in the session. So I do that with multiple communities, and I feel, oh gosh, I forgot the question.
Oh yeah, just asking about drama therapy. You're just talking about what the practice looks like. I'm hearing it goes beyond, like talk therapy. We're talking about, moments of pain, of trauma, of hope. But the drama therapy, you're inviting people to embody that and acting that out, and they're a part of a group where there's
Yeah,
resonance about those lived experiences.
yeah. And like I borrow a lot from theater, like conventional theater practice to put it in a drama therapy session. And I reference when I write about it, not so much in the workshop itself, Aristotle, because Aristotle would write about the, elements of drama and about catharsis. And catharsis, according to Aristotle, is like, invoking the emotional release using two basic emotions, pity and fear. So I keep asking, when we are listening, you get hooked if you are um, emotionally connected to someone, or like, you are hooked if you are fearful that you'd be in the shoes of the person who's telling the story, right? And then Aristotle also would talk about like moments of reversal, which is like from fortune to misfortune, or vice versa, from sadness to happiness, and like trying to guide the participants to identify these moments, of reversal, and then finally trying to find moments of awareness, like when you go through a journey, right? You have a moment of awareness, and hopefully you would be able to just like, look at your life. How did you live your life to reach this moment, and what can you make out of it, right? And this is the basic tenet of drama therapy for me. I would say it's like telling a story, hearing a story, acting out the story in safe environment, invoking emotions of pity, of fear, identifying moment of reversal, and building awareness.
And as you're talking about this process of drama therapy, are there any stories that you're able to share? I know you mentioned there's the confidentiality piece, but are there any stories, or maybe with the community oriented based drama, are there any stories that come to mind that were touching or moving to you?
You know what? Like now, while you are asking, like I'm I'm remembering a workshop I led here actually in Philadelphia, and like whenever you are working with vulnerable communities, many times you work with folks with different languages. If they are like uh, uh, new refugees or new immigrants, right? And you don't know who's going to show up because they have lots of things in life as
Yeah,
well, right?
yeah.
Uh, so uh, my principle is, if there's one person there, they come, I would lead the workshop, right? I would work with them, and I would honor their presence, right? So I'm collaborating with this organization, and then like they told me there are like 4 or 5 folks who are coming. So I was like, okay, cool. And then I go there, and there's only one person. She's like 70-year-old Ukrainian, right? And like she's, um, I think because of the lack of language and lack of communication, for some reason she thought this is like acting workshop, so she came well dressed, like as if she wants to take headshots, or uh so I honored that, and I was like, you know what we're gonna do, because I teach like auditioning techniques, and I teach, so we talked a little bit with like, with like using hands gestures, and like the few words of English, the whatever, and I understood that she's a doctor. She found her way to the US recently, and she always wanted to be actress, because it's very esteemed profession in her community. But and she was so excited to hear about this, and like, cool. And I spent 3 hours with her, and it was like, uh, touching, for me, and I hope it touched something in her story as well.
Oh, that's nice. And would you share a bit more about, you were talking earlier about that experience of a refugee that that splitness, not feeling, feeling disconnected from where you came from, but also like a level of disconnect and connection to the community that you're in. Would you speak more of how drama therapy is supportive to that experience?
Yeah. What happened is like, when you leave any community, even if it's like, even if your country is like, if you're living in a country with like, that's like war torn, you still have intimate and loving moments there. And like, you are missing it dearly, right?
Yeah.
And like, you need to honor that. Refugee journey is very difficult, right? And like especially here in the US, like in order for someone to be a refugee in the US, they have to go through years and years of interviews and screening, and until they get here. And every time they are repeating the same story again and again and again in every interview, every screening, and they are coached really well that they have to be consistent in telling the story, because like any officer would say, oh, you didn't say this in the last interview, so your story is false. So they are under like lots of pressure to do it. So I feel like my job with them would be to honor the other kind of stories that they don't have to share with the authorities, and like tell me stories that reflect their like loving memories from their home country, right? And like how they are navigating these emotions. They have relatives there, they have memories there, but they are physically present far away from them. And like how what can I do about this split? This split could be devastating, but like it could also have potentials, because when you are living in two places, you are like your perspective is broadened, is more broad to start with than anyone else, right? So you are like, you have more experiences. So trying to turn this like split to think about it from positive perspective rather than from negative perspective.
There is grief I'm hearing. I mean, in this split, you have, well, one, I'm hearing that experience of a refugee having that pressure with the authorities to tell one story, and a story that just stays the same. And so I'm hearing one of your aims is to give people space to get in touch with stories of love, of fondness that they had in the country that they've left, and to process what that is like for them leaving. And then rather than perhaps like dwelling in that difficulty, that loss, and how negative things are, looking at how much perspective they have, and maybe the growth and the healing and the unique perspective that they bring to the world, given that those experiences that they're having.
Oh, you are absolutely correct. And like, it's like, it's a loss, it's a lost question. And like, being able to both be near this loss, and distance yourself from it, so that like you'll have a perspective of what's happening, and like try to move forward with your life, right?
Yeah.
Most of them are also like young, like they are like 18, 19. I work with like 3 like teenagers in Germany, in Berlin. They were like, and they're about to go to college, and like and like I felt like I need to push them, like you are going to college, wherever you are, you're like in that age where you need to go to college, so let's and many of them are achieved professionals, like doctors, engineers. Like I had a workshop here in Philadelphia with like 2 Venezuelans. One is like opera singer and one is a journalist, and I looked them up, and they were like stars in their country, and here they are like cleaning dishes in the morning, and like trying to balance their lives. And like even this, like loss, not even the country, but loss of the person who they were, right? Very also like repetitive story, that our recurring story is like doctors, because like you are a doctor in your hometown and then you come to the host community, you need years of and years of like how to evaluate your degree and like how to work out the system, and like and like you might be the best doctor ever in your hometown, and you're here come and like you're nothing, and like how to make, so loss is definitely material things. You are losing, there's like your home, your property, your like belongings, your objects, but also your status, your like self-worthiness,
Yeah.
all the work you have done. So, and here's like we try with like whenever I'm with them in the same room, to highlight like I'm seeing you, I'm hearing your story, I know that you were like this, and like uh, let's try to move forward in a different direction, where like we're having all of this in the background, and it's, instead of like making it like us stalling where we are, it's pushing us to move forward, hopefully with positivity.
Yeah. Be, being near the loss and having a group in this context witnessing what you've lost, and then using that to move forward at the same time. Will you say more about that?
Like because like when you are going through the process of applying for refugee, like it's all the time, you are just like telling the story that broke you, right? Broke, and like when you are in a space or in a platform where like you are celebrating the person who you were, reminding yourself of who you were, and like for a minute feeling that you are able to be that person again, is very important in a refugee journey. Yeah.
Celebration of who you were, of
Yeah.
the that reconnection to the past and celebration of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very important, and like this is like, this would go to anyone, like, and all of us, like, have like moments of loss, or trauma, and like, how we can navigate that, how we can talk about it in a way, and like acting it out in a way that would make us like, feeling okay, we can move, can move on, we have lots of like repressed memories, like, and the example I keep talking about is like, let's imagine, God forbid, you have like like a car accident, and like, this is like traumatic event, like it's as, and then, but then like the minute you have it, like, you need to deal with the insurance and with the car and with and like you're
Yeah.
not processing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you are caught in doing zillion other things, and you need the space to process what just happened to you, and this is just, and imagine that something, like, like you are losing a home country, you're losing a self, you're losing an identity, and like you are caught up in all of these bureaucratic, interviews, offices, screening, and like you are not even having, a minute of connection with who you were, right? So drama therapy becomes like, as like, what, you're gonna tell me the story, you're gonna even act it out, you're gonna just like we're gonna witness it, right? Because like we have 4 or 5 folks in the room, right? We are witnessing, and you don't have to worry about anything else, right? And this is very important for the person. Yeah.
Yeah. And so important for all of us, I think, like you're saying, because you're so right. When we, when there are traumatic experiences of loss, especially in, Western culture, there's so much busyness. And then, with refugees, with the example of a car accident, there's so many logistical things. It's just a whirlwind. You're just from one thing to the next, and there's not that time to slow down, to process, to be with the grief, to be witnessed, to be connected. I mean, for me, some of the more powerful, moving experiences in my life are when someone shares vulnerably with me, pain, suffering, loss that they've experienced, and like I just am there witnessing that with them, or I'm on the other end sharing that with them, and then how powerful to in the context that you create for people to not just hear but see and experience through and acting out.
Right. Yeah. And it's and sometimes, like, even about like while you are talking about like even the idea of witnessing, I directed a play at the Wilma Theatre recently, and the play, it's public play, right? And like and it's about a group of American actors trying to stage a Syrian play, but then they meet with the playwright, and they know that they messed it up a little bit. So I made an effort to invite Syrian refugees in Philadelphia to come and watch it, right? And like we had talk back with the actors, and it was like they were witness. It was very important because they were like it was not drama therapy per se, right? But it was definitely therapeutic for them because like, oh, here they are in a major regional theater seeing, play that has some Arabic, and it talks about their home country. And they were like, this is like, yeah, we feel we are included. We feel like we are, there's like public discussion about it, and I matter, right?
Yeah.
And it's very powerful, right? And this is like, talking about like how I broaden up my perspective of theater. I would say like even my perspective of drama therapy is like also broadening up, like any experience that makes you in connection with your identity, if it's processed right, and if it has the conditions to be discussed, dialogued, then it could be therapeutic in a way.
Yeah. What you're saying is reminding me of Carl Tom. He is a therapist in marriage and family therapy, and then also Dick Schwartz, the founder of Internal Family Systems. Both of them, from what I know about the two, as they've continued as therapists, there's less of a difference between their personal life, their involvement in the community, and then their professional work. It's this. Yeah, it's kind of this disintegration of these boundaries. Like there still are some delineations, but you I don't know if that's making sense, but it's it just it seems like what I'm hearing from you is like there's with drama therapy, but then also with your training as a director and professional theater, there's become less of that splitness and more integration in your practices.
Yeah, and I think what helps me in my case is like uniting this as like, okay, whatever I'm doing, I'm committed to put the narratives of historically oppressed minorities, oppressed, in the public sphere, and like this is, so whatever I'm doing, it's like heading there. And I feel like this project has been like, it's like a compass for me. So when I accept any projects, I accept them knowing that, okay, this fits within that big project,
Yeah, no, that's nice. And so a lot of our listeners are therapists, people interested in therapy. What message do you have for our therapist listeners, maybe related to drama therapy, maybe related to the experience of refugees, the oppressed? What's important for therapists to know?
I think sometimes we get caught in the mechanics of our jobs all the time, even as like when we are leading a session, when we are like, And I just like, my message is like, try to deal with every news story or every person as if you are doing your first therapy session ever. You remember when you start the work, you're like, oh, you need to hit all the check boxes. You need to make sure you're prepared. You're like good listeners, like but then like when you do it for like every day for like years and years, it becomes sometimes mechanical for you. When you are working with the community as vulnerable as like the communities I work with, it's very important that like you just like try to remember how you started this, because sometimes like a look would ruin, like the way you are looking, you're not having eye contact, or like you're having too much eye contact or less of eye contact, that would ruin the whole thing. And I mean by ruin, like it would create resistance, or it would create counter effect, yeah. So that's my message.
That's good. That I'm hearing curiosity, like that.
Yeah.
Freshness of like I think we all get in routines, and then for like people who are newer to work, there's this formula, maybe the structure that you're trying to focus on. But I'm hearing you saying just being with people, like really listening and being with them on that emotional level.
Absolutely, yes.
That's nice. Well, I wish we had more time to talk. We're getting towards the end of the conversation here. Before I ask you the question I generally ask guests at the end, what do you have going on? If our listeners are interested in learning more about your work, where's a good place to direct them?
So I try to put everything on. I have academia.edu link, so I try to put everything there, but like I'm bad in archiving all my work. So you could find part of my work in Instagram, part on Facebook, part on Twitter, part on my, but you can always Google me, and like, I'm sure something would be, there. But usually I try to do stuff on academia.edu. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll link that in your Instagram and Twitter in the show notes for the listeners there. And then the last question I generally ask guests is, what's a message of hope you'd like to leave the listener with today?
I think the message of hope that I would leave with is there's silver lining in any situation, and let's just like try to find it and work on it. And like many folks who went through vulnerable situations are wanting to hear this, and like wanting to be reminded that let's be positive for a minute, and like we will go over whatever we are going through.
Amidst the grief, amidst the suffering, holding space for the silver lining, the positivity, and just lighthearted moments of fun. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Really nice meeting you.
Please press the subscribe button, as well as rating and reviewing our podcast. This helps others connect with what you've been hearing. If you have any questions, please contact us at themindofatherapist@gmail.com. These questions will be kept anonymous. I want to thank Eric Price for the wonderful music you hear in this podcast. Additionally, this podcast was created to provide accurate and authoritative information on the subject matter. Although we are interviewing licensed therapists, they are not your therapists. This podcast is not intended to serve as direct medical advice and should not be used as a substitute for direct professional help. It is given with understanding that neither the host, publisher, guests, or PCS are rendering legal, clinical, or other professional information. If you need a professional, we encourage you to find one. Visit Psychology Today to connect with a licensed clinician near you.